Welcome to Your Town. I'm the culinary host, Chef Wendy Brodie, Art of Food, and my wonderful guest today is Glen Hammer. We've known each other about 40 years, he said, in a few days or weeks,
Yeah.
he said. Anyway, Glen, thank you so much for being on. Glen is many things. He's a branding executive with Brand Viva, and but I know you through the food and wine world, and you see he is wearing this wonderful regalia, part of a group we both belong to. It's the largest international food and wine
Society in the world.
Society in the world. I'll let you explain its identity.
Le Chender Tisseur was started in 1248 with a band of goose roasters that got together and did feasts for the table. And they would have their prey and have people from all over would come over. And the king liked it so much he made it a guild establishment, and then a few years later gave it its coat of arms. And lasted for a few hundred years until the French Revolution. Marie Antoinette got her head cut off, and then there was the end of all guilds and abolished. And in 1950, there was a few guys led by Jean Valpy and Prince Karansky that got together in Paris and reconvened it and started again. And a couple of years later, there was a chapter in the United States, and the rest has just been going on and on. We have about 6,000 members, Wendy, in the United States. And I've been a member. Next year. It'll be 40 years. I was inducted in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania when I lived there. And I transferred out into the Monterey Bailliage when Ted Balistreri was bailli here and was the founding member. And we've had some great times over the years, you and I together. And I think you're a member over 35 years yourself. So
yes, I'll have to look at my regalia and see what number pin I have. But Glen, you have been the bailli twice. But how many years now? I mean, there's nobody that can.
I think I've done it now for almost 9 or 10 years this time. And then back in '82, I was bailli also then. And I did it for just a couple of years because I then had the good fortune of opening up my first restaurant, Hammerheads downtown, which you were at, I think, opening night, actually. And so we had a few good years in the restaurant business and opened up a few others. And I was involved in different culinary expertise, and I did some consulting over the years. But my wife likes the fact that I'm doing the Chender Tisseur because it's a nice hobby that I can put all my creative thoughts into, and it keeps me out of the restaurant business, as she says.
Oh, well, what was wonderful in reading your bio and going back through your history, I didn't realize you got your start in at the University of Las Vegas, your culinary start, so to speak. I always pictured you an East Coast man and born in New York, but so how did you get out to Las Vegas?
Well, I was born in New York City. I like to say I spent a few minutes in Brooklyn and went to grade school in Long Island and went to high school upstate New York in Kingston, which is right outside the Catskill Mountains. And summers I worked hotels in the Catskills as a busboy, a waiter, as a captain, and went to school at a 2-year school. And after a year of going to school upstate New York, it snowed from October to May, and I said, I need a change of scenery, and UNLV was calling. So they had a great hotel and hospitality school they had started a few years before that. And I drove cross country for about 3 weeks and took a vacation and visited friends on the way out and ended up in Las Vegas and went to school there and graduated 3 years later. And the whole time I was there, I worked at Caesar's Palace, which was a great opportunity, working for the Cleveland gang at Caesar's, and it was a great opportunity to work a little bit in the kitchen, a little bit out front, and I realized that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I was so fortunate out of UNLV to get a job at the Hyatt Regency San Francisco. So I went to work for Hyatt Hotels in '74, right after the hotel opened up there. And I had 5 great years with Hyatt, working in opening up Phoenix, went to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Dearborn, Michigan, where I met my wife, Sue. And then we went to Pittsburgh and had some great years there. And then an old friend of mine who was my general manager in Cherry Hill was the general manager of the DoubleTree, which had just opened in Monterey. And he needed a food and beverage director, and the first person he called was me. So my wife said, I went home and I said to Sue, I said, what do you think? She says, Monterey, 65 degrees, Pittsburgh, 32 degrees today. When are we leaving? So we moved out here and never looked back. I live here now. This year will be 40 years I'm living here. And I love the Monterey Peninsula. I've had a great life here and raised my son here. And we've had a great time being here and meeting great people and being part of the hospitality business here locally.
Well, you sort of specialized in special events almost for businesses too with your branding job. And didn't your father have one?
My dad moved out here after I moved here, and we started a little business doing branded hospitality items. And he unfortunately had passed away, and I had just closed up my restaurants and finished with that stanza of my life. And I went to the office that I had always been part of this company but never really worked in it. And I called my mother and I said, what do you do? And he says, listen to the message machine and tell me who called and I'll tell you how to handle it. And she was working another job. And so I taught myself the business basically and expanded it to specializing more in branded for the hospitality business. And I do probably wine lists, menu covers, and beverage lists for most of the better restaurants and hotels on the Monterey Peninsula, but I also expand out to doing country clubs and hotels all over the country. So it's something we have a couple factories that work for me, and I design them, and we make it happen, depending on which is the opportunity.
Well, it's very creative work, and tying your job back into your hobby, which is a job, really. It's just so fantastic.
Well, you know that because you actually have done the same thing I have done in the shed, and you've planned the functions, you've created the menus, and got together with the chefs around the Monterey Peninsula. And we have such a wealth of knowledge of quality chefs and restaurateurs here on the Monterey Peninsula. It's fun to bring out the best in what the chefs have to offer. So when I go and book a party or an event, it's not just a banquet. We call it an event because it's not just, we don't want them to just do what they normally do every day. We want them to push the envelope a little bit. So I feel that we bring out of the chef their best personality and put it on the plate.
You absolutely do, but it's because of your background that you have such an appreciation for food and wine pairings. And
thank you.
I'm always impressed how you raise our spirits, you raise our creative juices to come up with something. It's a very co-creative event when you plan something.
Well, as we both experienced an event this past week at the Inn at Spanish Bay, which
every detail.
Chef Rod, I went to see him, and I said, let's try to do something that really brings out the flavor of Spanish Bay. Why don't we just get all the chefs involved with the different restaurants? So he came back with this idea of the taste of the forest, and we had the chefs from Styx, we had the chef from Pepperly, we had the chef from Roy's, we had the pastry chef, we had Rod himself taking 2 courses, and it worked out unbelievably. Each chef came out and presented their course. We have the pleasure of having, as I call him, Sir Frederick Dame, who's the master sommelier of the universe, the head of the Court of Sommeliers for the United States, who has raised the sommelier program throughout the country and maybe the world, and what his expertise. And he's a member for 38 years in our voyage, And he comes every Christmas to the dinner, no matter where he is in the world, and he announces each wine with the course. And this year, Fred was in rare form. I told him the next day, I said, Fred, you did the best impersonation of Fred Dame I've seen in 5 years. And he looked at me and goes, yeah, I was pretty good, wasn't I? And Freddie was masterful to talk about the wine pairings with the food, and every flavor that we had with the wine in each course was just perfect. It really came out great.
Well, one of the thrilling things, not to be gender oriented, but I was so thrilled to see 3 women chefs at Spanish
right.
Bay, and they all did incredible job. I mean, you expect the guys to, and you expect the women, but it's always lovely to see them not just in pastry or garmage.
And each woman chef raised the bar at each time they actually each course that they made, from the foie gras from the chef from Styx, and then Angela's pasta from Pepperly was just the flavors just popped beautifully, and I thought the pastry chef did an unbelievable job. She just put some chocolate together that was light but then intense with chocolate flavor. And as you know, we didn't have a wine served with dessert. We had this hot chocolate, which was basically melted chocolate with a little cream added to it in a demi-tasse cup that I told everyone would raise their spirits all night long.
Like liquid ganache.
Liquid ganache, exactly.
It was decadent. No, and that ties back in because at all of the events that you put on, everybody gets a gift and a memory. So our home is, I don't want to say littered because it's treasured, but each thing you have created, and I kind of want to dwell on it so that other people get wonderful ideas that you've done, like the inscribed menu on a plate or a book stand or umbrellas,
well, it's all things that you can use every day.
Oh, absolutely.
And I actually got the idea, believe it or not, from you, because many years ago when you were doing the events, we stayed overnight in Ventana, and the gift that year was an apothecary jar, laser engraved with the Sten logo in it, which I use in the kitchen every day for my sea salt that's in there.
Oh, wow.
A little clasp on the back, and it sits out on the counter as a reminder of that night at Ventana, which we stayed over that night, and it was just wonderful. And your husband, Bob, is the one who made the ovation for let us stay over that night, in addition to a great dinner. But with that, then after that, I thought all the gifts should have been something they could use either in the culinary world or on an everyday basis. In this case, the umbrella we made, I always wanted to do this. I did the Shen logo, and it covers the whole top of the umbrella, and they came out really great. So people remember it. I wear the Shen emblem wherever I can to promote our Gourmet Society, because it is a link between our friendships, of all of us who belong, and that's what it's all about.
No, it is. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization. One of the things I'm curious about with your time in Las Vegas and Caesars, I know what happens in Las Vegas is supposed to stay in Las Vegas, but can you share any fun stories or memories from that point in time?
I was working as a waiter at Caesar's Palace on the Champagne Brunch, and the old comedian Maury Amsterdam was sitting at the table with his wife and another couple, and I go to pour the coffee in, and he goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "You're pouring the coffee all over me." And I started cracking up at the table, and he says to me, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "Mr. Amsterdam, I'm sorry." I said, "You just crack me up every time I watch you on TV, and now I'm sitting here pouring coffee on you, and I'm laughing about it." He goes, "Well, go and laugh at someone else." He says, "Don't pour the coffee on my wife." But there was times we did banquets that I worked at there, and all of a sudden, Danny Thomas is there, and his wife gets up, who was a great singer then, and he would go just start singing, and she brought the house down, and everyone always remembered that she always used to end up the party with a song, and it was Danny Thomas's wife that used to do that. So The stories in Vegas are just unbelievable. I mean, I can remember 4 o'clock in the morning being at the Hilton Hotel. We just saw Chuck Berry play in the lounge.
Oh,
and
my
he was
goodness.
roaming around the lobby. And all of a sudden he sat down. And for half an hour, we're sitting there talking to Chuck Berry in the lounge, right outside in the middle of the lobby. And my 2 roommates and myself, he says, you can't make this stuff up. This is Chuck Berry right here. And he was just saying, hey, let's go and have a drink together or something. And it was stories go on and on. There's some stories that will stay in Vegas, though, also.
The foods and the presentations are all just so elaborate there. Are there any special banquets or creations that you never got over?
Well, Caesar's always did it the best. I did parties at other hotels, but Caesar's Palace was always opulent. And I can remember one time, Maurice Gaillet was the executive chef of Caesar's, and Billy Weinberger was the president, and his wife Jeannie and him had a party at their house. So there was a group of us that worked, and it's called the Chain Gang, which was part of the banquet department. So they always called me to come with them because Mrs. Weinberger liked me, and I used to do some extra things for them. I can remember one time the chef is making bellinis, and they had a kilo of caviar that was like this.
Ooh.
And normally you put the caviar on top of the bellini with the creme fraiche and so on. To make the bellinis, he took one whole tin and put it in the pot to make the batter, okay, for the bellinis with the caviar, which
In it.
in it, okay. And I looked and I couldn't believe my eyes. And he says to me, he used to keep a cigar in the corner of his mouth, and he had a little hitch. He goes, Glenn, he goes, watch this. He says, we're gonna really well them here tonight. He says, screw them. He goes, they got 2 more kilos out there. He says, we'll use one to make it the right way.
Oh, isn't that a great
So
story?
opulence, that was over the top.
And probably with that background, you are quite a music appreciator as well, and has organized that. And
Well, music, I love music, as you know, and I'm a frustrated entertainer of some sort, but once in a while I get up and sing a song once in a while, as you know. So.
well, you carry it off so well, and next time I hope you will come again, and maybe I can entice you into a song.
It could be. Maybe it's a good day. Usually a couple of cognacs beforehand will entice me too.
Well, thank you so much, Glenn.
Pleasure. Good to be here. Thanks, Wendy.